Joined now by Carmen Vitali, Fox Sports NFC North reporter. I want to get your take on defense for Detroit in the draft. I know you've been paying a lot of attention to it last season, but who's your sleeper picks that Detroit could possibly take a really good look at?
Well, here's the thing. We get so caught up in the first round, right? And you guys are picking later in the first round. So it's kind of who's going to be available, who's the best available. You've seen that Brad Holmes is absolutely one of those guys that's going to take the best guy available that's on his board, regardless of what anybody thinks of that position and what that position of need is. But I'm looking kind of more towards the later rounds. And you look at that pass defense this year, it did not live up to expectations, and it was a real weakness for this team. And in order for them to go forward, get better, especially in a tougher division, that's going to need to get better. Now, obviously, that comes with more depth at the corner positions. You have to insulate against injury. But what I'm looking at, too, is don't sleep on a better interior line, D-line rotation, and making sure that that is constantly putting pressure on opposing offensive lines, on opposing quarterbacks, because honestly, that's going to help out the back end a lot more. A guy like later in the draft, I'm looking at a guy like Braden Fisk out of Florida State. I mean, this is a guy that's like, he's a coach's dream. He's gritty. He's tough. He doesn't have all of the crazy athleticism that you're going to see, but man, does he work his ass off. So I think that that's someone that sounds like a Dan Campbell guy to me. Sounds like an Aaron Glenn type of guy to me, and I really think that could help this unit overall.
I think Dan Campbell guys, Brad Holmes guys, they let themselves be known very early on in this process.
Right.
So we'll see who they end up going with. Defensive-wise, first round, is that how you think Detroit will go?
I have to think so. I mean, you have this offensive juggernaut. You have it under a guy like Ben Johnson who can make just incredible use of all these different talents that he has, all these different weapons that he has. And now, I mean, you look at the offensive line group too. I know that you need a little bit more depth there. Jonah Jackson is up, due for a contract. Graham Glasgow, you probably want to get deeper there regardless. I don't know. This is a really good offensive line class. It's a deep offensive line class, especially at guard. So I'm wondering, I don't know, do you really want to go first round with that? And so I go back to the defense, and I think that you want to try and get more of a blue chip kind of outside corner, someone like the corner from Toledo, and I'm blanking on his name,
Quinyon Mitchell.
Quinyon Mitchell, there it is. Is someone like that, a long guy that's really going to test the outside and lock that down.
What was glaringly an issue with that pass defense this past season that you caught on that they could make amends for in this draft?
Honestly, a lot of it had to do with injury. And this was not something that was new from the season prior, where the pass defense kind of wasn't up to snuff, and they tried to insulate against that. They got Emmanuel Mosley, they got C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and then what happens?
Injury.
Heartbreaking when it comes to Emmanuel Mosley in particular, just given the fact that his one game back, he tears his other ACL, and it's heartbreaking when you see that. There's not a whole lot you can do against that unless you have a really deep rotation and you can kind of weather those storms. So I think that's where the focus needs to be. And honestly, that's a pretty easy fix, all things considered, because AG is a great coverage guy. He knows what he's doing back there. And I have full faith in the scheme as long as these guys can stay healthy.
Overview of this draft. Does it work in favor for Detroit, who has 29th overall?
I think Brad Holmes works in favor for Detroit because he knows how to identify talent, not only in the first round like we're talking about, into the second, third, fourth rounds. And you've seen Detroit be able to hit and get, I mean, the first 4 picks last year, all being day one impact starters, that's incredible and almost unheard of. So I place full faith in Brad Holmes to weed out the best of this draft.
In Brad Holmes we trust.